Hi, my name's Sani. I'm a freshman at NYU. This is day one in a series of vlogs about stories of my life and going to NYU. As said, I'm an incoming freshman at NYU, and I'll be making these vlogs by no particular schedule. I just find it really interesting to tell these types of stories from my short life. So, this is the story of how I lost around $400,000 at my current age 17, and how I found inner peace by doing that. So the title is a little bit clickbaity. I didn't exactly lose that money. I gave it away, and we'll get to that later. I grew up in Virginia Beach with a Muslim name, and my first name was so hard to pronounce that my whole life I've gone by my middle name, even outside of school. When people try to speak my first name, it's just incredibly hard for them to do so. So I've just gone by Sani my whole life. It's been hard in the Bible Belt. I've been hit with a lot of racism over the years, but I noticed that the smarter people I talk to, the less racism I see, really. Speaking of intelligence, I just want to talk about my early school years. So when I was an elementary schooler, we had a gifted test called the COGAT, the Cognitive Abilities Test. Anyone from around the area would know what I'm talking about. On the COGAT, I scored perfect on all categories 3 times in a row. I got rejected the first time, rejected the second time, and rejected the third time. The third time, my mother and my father were completely fed up from the results. They decided to email the people in charge, and they looked back at my past scores, and they said they'll move it to the wait list. From the wait list, I didn't get any response until 2 days before actually entering the school. So I basically went into a newly renovated building, $70 million building, full of the most gifted kids from Virginia, and possibly around the whole East Coast, with no preparation at all. And you could see how that would go wrong. By 6th grade, I'd pretty much completely checked out of school. I had a deep interest in the brain and consciousness, which I didn't know at the time was a brewing interest for neuroscience, and I was unable to express it because you don't really take a lot of classes concerning neuroscience when you're a middle schooler. And by the middle of 6th grade, I was already basically taking lunch money from my mom and paying all the smart kids to do my homework for me, while I would just read Wikipedia about all these different topics. But most of the day, what I really did for fun outside of school, I just played Minecraft and watched YouTube all day. Well, what else can you do? And at that point, I always felt like I was on the outside looking in. What does a 6th grader, have to do with consciousness? What does a 6th grader have to do with neuroscience in the first place? In 7th grade, I tried dropshipping, and I'll say this, it obviously didn't work out. We barely broke even, and I spent hundreds of dollars of my parents' money. So lucky to have that money, by the way. And we basically broke even by maybe a few $100s. Now that was my first business experience of all time. We started about 6 different businesses, me and my friend Ben, and we made $3,000, and it was just all from my parents' money too, so I just given it back to them. And then with all the rest of my free time, I would just play games with my friends who were probably as directionless as I was, and reading about philosophy and new innovations in neuroscience and all of that. And it was really, it was one hell of a childhood. I feel like I kind of wasted it. So 8th grade. 8th grade was peak COVID. I had no graduation at all, and I had no motivation either. Basically, I would just wake up, hop on my classes, and fall asleep, and then cheat on my homework. And that's basically how all my days went, and I would just hop on Minecraft, or start scrolling through YouTube, or TikTok was a thing at that point, then I would probably watch TikTok. This is actually a funny thing. Since, we live in the Bible Belt and all that, it's a bunch of white people, I would just tell my teachers whenever I missed an assignment that I had something to tend to for Ramadan. And every single time I did this like a double-digit amount of times, they would just let me fly, and nothing happened from it. So paying people to do my assignments breezing through school, unambition. Breezing through high school, good on paper and completely ambitionless. That's how I was at that age. I truly had no real skills other than, I would say, commenting on social media posts or maybe clicking fast in Minecraft or something like that. And my life felt completely empty, like there was no substance in it, and it just hit me all of a sudden. Let me tell you how it hit me. In ninth grade, with those people no longer around to help me, going into basically an academy program within high school where I didn't know anyone that well because I would have just paid them to do my assignments. I started failing my classes. I got a C in chemistry. Failing by my standards. I got like a B in algebra. I got like a D in Spanish. I was doing terrible for my standards. And everything at life kind of hit me at once. I had this sort of awakening where I realized that everyone around me was sort of slowly developing their own passions and ambition and all of that. And here I was, just stuck, still in a toddler mindset, completely without any drive or any ambition at all. So, in ninth grade, I met my friend David. And, when you're in high school, people meet each other. They're usually alike in some way. So when I met David, he was just like me. He was completely ambitionless. He watched TikTok all day. He scrolled very fast, super fast. And the most of all, the thing I'd never seen before, he would buy so many fake designer clothes and fake designer jewelry. Having one of my first real friends who wasn't friends with me just to make fun of me, we started to both contemplate on our lives since we both reached that moment of awakening at the same time. And we decided that, if anything, what our lives are built on, we have to make some money. So we started offering social media services, and it took us a few months to make $100. And then we split that halfway each. We had $50 each, and you could take about half of that off from that's just going to be profit. We would manage local people's social media accounts, and it worked tremendously. Actually, we had a viral video from one of our local accounts, had Virginia Beach in its title, but we were really making noob money, not really enough to fund anything that we would really want. I mean, yeah, we could always go occasionally to the vending machine to grab a snack or two, but that's pretty much it. And every day I would come home from school, I would completely neglect my work, completely neglect everything that I had to do for school, and I would just hop on Discord and start messaging people around, start finding people like a total bum. And that's when, things started to heat up a little bit after maybe a few months. So finally in October 2021, David and I founded the Wonton Agency, later known as Wonton Media. A few of you might know me from there, actually, if you're watching this video. And it was named after my Minecraft username, which was like wonton or some variation of that, like wonton soup or something like that. I don't even remember at this point. And basically, we spent our entire amount of consulting money to make it look legit, to make it look dashy and flashing. We went all in, 100% in on fake it till you make it, which is crazy because it was pretty much completely built like our personalities too. David with the fake clothes and me with the grades. And we had used a few of our early clients, or maybe our parents or friends and families, to get some early testimonials, some real testimonials, and we made everything look legit. Sometimes we would practically just buy early clients just to kind of show it off. And this was just out of nowhere, looking at our first skill, the only, so to speak, skill that two little unambitionless kids had, which was scrolling on social media. We knew so much about social media that we could accurately produce a post that other people would like. And we passively learned that skill, and it was incredibly useful. This is where things really changed for us. This is where things started ramping up. And this was a genius strategy on both of our parts. No self-glazing though. So basically, we would take that money from our real clients, and with permission, we would reinvest it into getting those accounts that we want. Sometimes we would just promote their posts for them, and then they would cycle back to us as clients. We would also use money from our real clients to promote our own accounts. We would run somewhere in like 40 to 50 accounts where we would just post complete slop, and we would generate basically clients that are ourselves, and from that we would get other clients as well. And as it went on, we just kept getting less and less productive at school, more and more productive within our online environment, and it got to the point where we were bringing in a few $1,000s, and we would constantly have arguments about how we would divide it, until we finally thought 50-50 straight down, no matter how much work each person does. And it was a miracle that David didn't turn into a lazy bum, because we did the exact same amount of work basically. And at some point, after that hustle for maybe half of the school year, things started exploding for us at phenomenal levels. And I know this is not the normal success story where it takes someone a few years, or it takes someone the latter portions of their life to get success. And that's why I keep reiterating, we are completely lucky. We are so lucky for this to happen to us. So one day we'll randomly get like a $30,000 client, and the other day would get like a $10,000 client. And we really turn to those like annoying rich kids at school. A lot of schools have those kids where they're just always talking about money, showing off money, something like that. And eventually everyone in my grade knew that we had money, but no one had any idea how we made it. Now, the first rule of this was to never, ever tell our parents. And also, never tell anyone that knows our parents. And it's more about the fact that both of us came from the same background. And how do you explain to immigrant parents that a company registered under your Minecraft username is now bringing in tens of thousands of dollars? They would definitely either shut us down or think we're scamming or we're stupid. And to be honest, like it happens for a lot of people, I think money changed us. And now that I look back at it, money definitely changed us for the worse. David started buying real versions of all of the fake things that he couldn't afford before. And you could tell the difference actually, because they were a lot higher quality and they weren't ripping apart or had random shit stains on them. I started off with subscriptions, because that was one thing that I could never buy under my parents. I could never buy subscriptions. And then I realized why they didn't let me buy them, because they drain up so much money. I then bought a Rolex watch, which was my whole sum of money. And this watch did not fit my wrist at all, and I had no opportunity to go get it resized. So I'd post a lot on my Instagram. I would post pictures of my Rolex, and then I would crop out the end where it was falling off my wrist. At some point, I even thought of buying a whole car and telling my parents that I wanted it in a giveaway, like a real Tesla. I was on the buy button. So David and I, we lived this double life for months on end, and then in February 2022, my life changed forever. I was taking a bio test when I got called out of class, and normally it would be because my grades were dropping too low, or because I got caught cheating. So I was incredibly nervous. Then my teacher had my mom on my phone. So my dad had a heart attack, and heart attack was called the widowmaker. My dad had been having coughing problems for about a week, and he went to a doctor. They told him it must be COVID. Then he went to another doctor another week later, and they said, "You're having a heart attack." So his left ventricle was completely shut down, and his right ventricle had an ejection fraction of 5%. The doctors gave him a 90% chance of dying in the first year within the heart attack. The doctors gave him about a 90% chance of dying within the first year of his heart attack, and 99% within the first 2 years. So obviously, my grades tanked even more. School was no longer a thing for me. I was absent from school for about 2 or 3 months, and my teachers, they were sympathetic, but they weren't too sympathetic because they knew that even if I came back, that this is something that would be the most challenging to recover from, and something that I clearly couldn't do as a student. And so I was there in the hospital with my dad for that long amount of time, sleeping on a lumbar chair, and all I had was my Wikipedia, which I would save as an HTML file when my teachers would lock my screen, and my school bag, and some magazines that they had over there for the patients. And one of the magazines that stood out to me was the Entrepreneurial magazine. I was thinking about my life. I was thinking about my dad's life, and realizing that I hadn't done much of value. I realized that after all the money was gone, I really wouldn't have anything at all in my life. I wouldn't have grades, I wouldn't have happiness, I wouldn't have friends, and I probably wouldn't have my family. I was sort of just a kid who was handed the keys to life, and it hit me again, the luck that we had. Everything for that long amount of time felt so fast. We were so lucky to make this huge amount of money, but unlucky at the same time, because we were just kids who got handed the key to adult life a little too early. When I thought my dad might never wake up again, he came home. He had a pacemaker and a stent, but he came home, and that was that. And he started to get normal very fast, and my life reminded me of my luck. Going back to my molecular biology class, I would be confused. It was just a very confusing time for me. I was stuck in this loop where I always thought about how, in terms of money, I had so much more than my teachers, and I didn't want to let that ego get to me at all. So instead of feeling superior for the first time in all of my grades for my whole life, I felt something to learn from them. I felt that I could actually learn something from my teachers, and that was incredibly powerful for me. I learned to look up to people who had more knowledge than me, not more money than me. So one day in our IT class, our IT teacher was really chill. So basically, no, he wasn't chill. We were just bad students. We would just ask him to go to the restroom about 2 minutes apart. Then we would walk to the vending machine all the way down at the opposite side of the school, get a snack, and then come back. And at this point, David and I really knew what we had to talk about. We had to talk about where to really allocate our money. So by that talk, we agreed to put it in a crypto account and just keep it locked until we figure out a meaningful way to spend it and a meaningful way to make an impact. And on the way back from the walk, I got an email on my phone from a .edu email address. It was from an Ivy League, and he was a student who was recently dropping out because he had made so much money. And we sold Wonton Media on the spot right on the spot. We gave him the crypto address, and he sent the money, and that was it. Now, at this point, my life just felt euphoric. I just had this long contemplation about the actual value of money and what it means for me. And then, at the same time, I had enough money to pay for my entire college education, but I maybe didn't have the education to get into a college that I wanted to. So when I checked my grades for the first time ever in probably since 6th grade, my GPA was a 3.5. Really bad for Asian parent standards and really bad for my standards as well. So I went to my counselor and I used to get just some extra help and get the most help out of her. And she made me a really detailed plan. So over the summer, I would take 4 community college classes. I would do passion building. I would start on research. I would do 5 non-community college classes. And I would do a program at Wharton. And I started really trying hard at everything. And I wanted my reputation as just the dumb kid, the dumb, empty kid, to be gone, but it never seemed to break. In 11th grade, I took 6 AP classes during the year, 2 dual enrollment classes, which are college classes. During the summer, I wrote 2 research papers, one of which got published. I had a deep passion for neuroscience, but I was still being held back by that debt. I think that's a good way to describe it. I had a friend since 6th grade. His name was Min, and he's the smartest kid I've ever known. And he would always talk to me about social currency and self-optimization and playing my life like a video game and things like that. I would never pay attention to him because, he was nerdy, he was a geek in my terms. But being one of the smartest kids at our high school, I started to actually pay attention to some of those things. I started to try to self-optimize myself. I tried building a new personality out of nothing, but I always had this money just holding me back. So music became an escape for me. Since I was a kid, I've played many instruments, and I started listening to more and more music. I'd listen to any deep SoundCloud rap. I'd listen to sigilcore, hyperpop, classical, hip-hop, gospel music, Quran recitation. I'd listen to everything. I started with obsessing over Kanye. This was before he did the Hitler stuff, by the way. And I genuinely, I loved the art of it. Even if I couldn't do that myself, I loved what you could visualize in your brain using music. David was the same way, and he absolutely loved art. He loved all types of art, but mainly gothic art or dark ambience and things of that sort. And that's when I realized that our interests were starting to converge and we could truly create something great from this. So with the help of the guy that we sold our agency to, we made one final announcement, and that was a redirection towards our new art collective. Now, just this redirection gave us a lot of high-ticket names following our art collective. We started posting just random creations, like David altered a photo of a nebula in some way, and he posted that, and because of our prior following, it did pretty well, but we weren't really artistically justified. Meanwhile, I continued my neuroscience research. I kept going with all these different real human passions other than just making money and spending the money. And we would occasionally just post random bullshit to our art collective till one day, when it kind of sat quietly for a good amount of time, I heard about this thing called Y Combinator. A lot of you academic weapons must have heard of Y Combinator, where basically you go to startup school and you fund startups. It was a very interesting idea because it's incredibly popular and it's just a pure helping force. Now, going into this with all of the regret of making all this money, spending it on worldly things, just being pure annoying, blending my passion for sciences, arts, and business, we started season 1, thus named after Y Combinator, of our art collective. We would accept applications for our art collective, and our art started catching on a lot. We would produce concepts, and our artists would basically go off of that, and producing a good rendition would get you funded. Same way as making a good startup at Y Combinator will get you funded. And it was more than just money funding. Just like how we did in our agency, we would provide ways to promote the art like never before. We moved beyond just digital print art to music, to production, to movies, to everything. And money kept draining from the account. Instead of just promoting ourselves, the only form of advertisement that we used for our art collective was emailing others. And the motto that we launched with was deeply personal. Between the periods of 9th and 10th grade, we had an incredible amount of press coverage, just circulating about the agency, not about us. We would absolutely despise it because at the end of the day, we weren't adding anything to society at all. We weren't really helping anyone. We were just adding superficiality to the superficial matrix. So we launched season 1 with our motto, no press. This meant no ads, no news articles, none of that. That also helped us keep it as exclusive as possible and produce more seasons, so we would lose less money as well. And we would also provide our so-called artists with NDAs, which we couldn't really enforce, but they scared a lot of people. And just this whole process, it felt so much better than taking money from our clients. It really felt like where we were supposed to be. It felt amazing just giving away great amount of money to the people who actually deserve it. And we slowly but surely realized that David and I, we weren't real artists, but with our power that comes with money, we could help these artists thrive. And that was the amazing part of it. I think that was the first time in a few years that I had felt true happiness, really. More dopamine than scrolling from any of those reels or consulting someone on their social media presence. So in 11th grade, my GPA started climbing, and I had this small groups of friends that I had neglected before. I started to reconnect with them, and I made genuine friends other than people to just flex my money on. I played tennis because I enjoyed it. I played cricket because my parents played it, and I had a bunch of normal teenage experiences every weekend with my friends while working incredibly hard. During summers, I balanced these online meetings in different countries. So in Toronto, I was taking a meeting for Wharton, and in Dubai, I was taking a research project. I wrote a whole research paper that got published. I met my small group of friends, and we all got along tremendously well. We all had similar goals, and we were all probably going to go places together. So we used about half of our total money for funding artists in season 1, and there was one final piece missing that would solidify me as just a normal person whose life wasn't constant hustle and bustle, but rather balanced in some way. And this was getting into college. I'm gonna make another video on this, so I'll probably link it in here. But getting into college was probably the final piece of the puzzle for me, where I could finally justify those endless days of hard work and justify everything that I did to genuinely change who I am as a person, from going to dumb and empty on the inside with a lot of money, from having a balanced life and being genuinely intelligent, and having only about, I think it's like $100,000 to my name. Now I'm in senior year. I'm in the last quarter of my senior year. I have a group of incredible friends. Shout out Seth, Min, David, Ian. Shout out all of you. I'm taking 8 AP classes and 3 college classes, and I'm potentially going to graduate within the top 10 class rank of my school. I broke a record at my school for the most credits taken by a single student by taking double the course load during summers and double the course load during the year for the past 2 years. I got into Cornell University, and I also got into New York University as a presidential scholar, where I hope to attend the next 2 or 3 years because I have that many AP credits. And I'm really glad to graduate debt-free. As now I learned the value of money really early by learning a hard lesson. And the best part of all of this, I opened my acceptance letters with my dad, the same dad who was supposed to die 3 years ago. We really beat the odds together. We launched season 2 of the Art Collective recently, and I stepped down as more of a concept creator to give more talented artists more room to run things. Tomorrow is senior skip day. I'm just going out with friends for hot pot and volleyball. Yesterday was prom, and I just went as a normal kid who likes tennis, music, and video games, and who does pretty well in school. And that's my achievement I'm most proud of, over all of the money, over anything else. My dad has made an amazing recovery. He's back to normal now. He's really close to back to normal. And like I said earlier, I kept around 100,000 in index funds for emergencies. every weekend I pay for anything my friends need to buy out of that money, and it's actually growing. In my next video, I'm gonna explain how I got into Cornell and NYU after being a dumbass for so long. And in a few weeks, I'm moving to New York City and start my college experience. Thanks for listening.